Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
It's so good to see you both virtually.
Yes, likewise.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicholas. We're really excited to have this conversation with you and to learn a little bit more about Whitesnake's project's Death by Life, which is an opera exploring the intersection of systemic racism and mass incarceration. And at Opera Omaha, we're really excited to be amplifying your involvement in this opera and to chat with you today a little bit about your experience and your reaction to it. So first, could you tell us a little bit about the project and your role in it?
Sure. So you've explained already that it's about mass incarceration and systemic racism. So the opera itself is 5 different scenes written by 5 different Black composers exploring that message of what it means to be incarcerated and how the systems that have been made to control us have destroyed so many lives. And all the text is written by people who have experienced incarceration. The writers are the people who have experienced incarceration and family members. And the score is written by 5 different Black composers. And I am singing all the low male roles. So it's 3 different people who have gone through incarceration.
It's amazing, Nicholas.
I'm excited to jump into it. It's definitely been a singular experience, but one I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of.
Excellent. What was it like learning the musical language of different composers?
It's not been challenging so much as it's been interesting trying to understand what they want as far as like the markings go. Everybody writes so differently. So getting into like the actual notes and things, and they've written it so well and the text has been written so well that it kind of just flows together, but understanding the nuances that they want, because they write differently, and that differently than how I learned people wrote or composed in school. That has been the interesting part in learning the music.
And what was your first reaction to this project in general? Like when you were first approached about it, and you first got to read it, what was that like?
So when my manager first came to me with the opportunity and explained to me what it was about, and we've sort of been a part of this from the ground up, so I didn't really have anything to look at first. I was just excited to be approached about telling this story. I said, how can I make this happen? What do I need to do to make sure I can be a part of this? When I got the score and then understood what they would be doing to make this live stream possible, my reaction was, wow, I have no idea how they're going to make this happen. I don't want to give too much about the story away before anybody gets the chance to see it, but Whitesnake Projects has developed some very interesting, innovative technology to pull this off. So I'm excited. What's a good word to, curious as to how this process will go.
Yeah, because all of it is virtual. Like the plan is that it's going to be live and virtual live presentation, which I imagine is a little daunting and a little nerve-wracking from a performance point of view.
Yeah, I've done one other show during this virtual opera experiment that we've all been doing, and it was just recorded like right here in my living room. But for this, I'm working on a green screen, and it sort of feels like being in a video game, and I love playing video games. I know Chabrelle loves a video game too. So it's been a really interesting experience, but again, very new, very innovative, and I'm just very curious as to what goes on behind the scenes that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, and shout out to Whitesnake's projects, because I know that they've been pretty on the forefront of experimentation and innovation with all that kind of virtual technology. They did Alice in the Pandemic a little bit earlier on, the video game opera. And I think that it's a really exciting project to be a part of, to just try something that's a little bit different and a little bit risk taking for that matter. So I'm excited that I feel and share your your nervousness about doing that for sure, because
Yes.
I know that would be very nerve-wracking for me. But we are very excited and supportive of your involvement for that.
Yeah.
I feel that positive energy. Thank you.
Nick, how did you, I know you approached the music in a certain way. How did you approach the three different characters when you, dramatically?
So luckily, we've been able to have access to the source material to read and try to understand what the authors were trying to say and how I can best express that. I've tried to be as casual isn't a good word. I've tried to be as honest as I can. When I first started thinking about it, I thought I was going to have to be doing all this big emoting and not really being honest, because I was like, I don't have the experience of this. But I think if I could just, pare it back to the humanity of it and try to tell each individual story as a person experiencing something. That's how I've tried to get into each character.
I love that.
I love that too, because I think one of the really cool things that this opera is doing is showing the humanity of incarcerated individuals. And I think that a lot of times in society, we are just so quick to label and judge and see incarcerated individuals as less than and inferior in a way that does not take into account the systemic issues that are involved when it comes to incarceration and the very unjust way that we carry out our justice system. And so I'm really excited for audiences to get to know these characters and these stories and these humans and be able to have that really humanistic view of these individuals. I think that that's really, really powerful and must be also quite an emotional and heavy lift for you to take on as an artist, I imagine. What does it mean for you as an artist to be a part of this kind of an opera?
So the whole reason I sing or have kept singing is because I really want to invest in storytelling and using my voice in that way. And I've had my own experiences with what it means to be a family member of someone who has experienced incarceration. So I want to approach this with as much empathy and care as I can, and do the work, the research, the talking with people that I can become transparent so that I'm just a vehicle for this story, that it's not about me getting up there and singing, it's about us learning to truly be empathetic to people who have been in this kind of situation.
That sense of empathy is so necessary, I think, for our type of artistry when we're trying to connect with so many different people who definitely don't have any of these experiences or have very small experiences with people who have lived these lives or know people that have lived these lives. So I commend you for really taking the time to open yourself up and allow your heart to take on, whatever sort of trauma or tragedies or stories that these people have so willingly and vulnerably allowed the composers and the directors and this whole creative process to present to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this has been challenging to allow myself to open up to this, because through this process, I'm bringing my own baggage, my own guilt, my own sense of lost opportunities. But then again, while I can recognize that, I can say, this isn't about me right now. This is a space where I can bring my life experience to help shape a story, but this is the story of these individuals. And they were so gracious to give White Snake Projects permission to that level of vulnerability. And I'm grateful for them, and I'm grateful to be a part of that storytelling experience.
Nick, that's so beautiful, and so it's such a generous way, I think, to approach your artistry too. If you don't mind sharing, can you tell us a little bit more about how your life experience has shaped the way that you're approaching this particular opera?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I've had my own experience with family members experiencing incarceration, and with that, the baggage that comes with that. If anything, it's made me aware that I want to, like I said, tell an honest story, recognize that it's not about me telling the story, but me being the conduit for that storytelling, but also understanding that I have empathy as a family member, and that means something to being able to get up and to express. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It really does. And conversely to that, how has this opera changed the way that, or maybe not changed the way, or how has it shaped the way that you have approached your life experience?
Sure. So as singers, we are expected to do more than, learn some notes and memorize some words. We have to do that work of getting into the character, getting into the story, and doing all the reading, doing the talking, being in conversation with people has just made me aware of how much I didn't know and how much my empathy work needed to grow. Not that I would never speak disparagingly of somebody experiencing incarceration, but I just had no idea of how traumatic it could be past this, being locked up. That kind of thing, I feel like maybe I could sense, but just the going ons of prison life and how do I say this? The callousness of individuals to want to ruin somebody's life. There's a story that if we go over or talk about in the show about a mother who files a complaint against the police for targeting her son for no reason. And after that, it's like they purposefully set out to ruin that young man's life. He's not done anything. The only reason they're doing this is because somebody spoke up against the police in that city. I don't want to say too much. I'm not sure what I can say. So doing this process has made me very aware of the importance of empathy and the importance of advocacy and advocating in whatever way is available to you. Like I said earlier, I had come to where I am in my life right now out of this desire to want to be of service because I wasn't seeing how my singing was being of service. And I understand that we, bring joy and distraction and all this kind of thing. But it wasn't until I was able to dig into this project after having the experiences that I've had in what it means to give of yourself, give of your craft, to be of service in this community sense. Now I can see that I'm able to do that with the right stories, with the right team, with the right opportunities as a singer.
As a singer, as an artist, as a human being, right?
Yes, all of the above.
All three.
I'm wondering, Chabrelle, does any of this resonate with you and your approach to your roles and in your artistry as well? And have you had any sort of similar experiences?
Uh, yes, actually. I try to, whenever I pick up a role or even just an art song, I I read the text, even if it's in a different language. I try to really get a good understanding of the text because the text tells you so much. Like what somebody says tells you so much about who they are. So like, why I'm in Houston right now. I'm also in a hotel, just sort of just hanging out. And I sang the role of Contessa. And I actually hated the role of Contessa for the longest time. I thought she was very whiny and depressed and just not standing up for herself, when I, from my own experience, realized that I have never really stood up for myself. So I think what I saw in the Countess was my own weakness and something that I didn't realize that I do on a daily basis. So I'm at a point in my life now where I'm not too afraid of confrontation or not too afraid to speak my mind when I feel that something is wrong or when I feel something has affronted me. So I felt like this second dive into the Countess, even though it was just a few scenes for the concert, I was able to tap into that anger and interpret her in a less sort of whiny, yeah, I mean, it's just whiny way, and like actually have her confront the Count and have her be like, look, sir, just because Carabino's in that closet doesn't mean that I slept with him, okay? Get out of here. Non son rea. But I digress.
Your Countess.
I'd love to see you sing Countess.
Yes, everybody. We want to see Chabrelle
Yeah.
sing Countess.
It's on live stream. Quick plug. It's not about me.
Melody,
Yeah.
you're a director.
Of sorts, yep.
And the singer and the producer.
Okay, thank you.
Extraordinaire.
I need to do my research, apparently.
I
What
just
is that?
like opera.
Yes. So, I mean, I've never been in that position to manage trying to tell multiple stories at once. What is that like? And how would you feel about doing an opera like this, where you're trying to tell perspectives of incarcerated individuals and their families and police and all this, that, and the other?
Yeah. I think that it's an immense challenge, but one that needs to be approached with the same kind of empathy that you were describing in the way that you as an artist are approaching the particular role. I think that it is the director's job to really be empathetic about telling a genuine story and identifying the truth of that story, and especially one that does involve actual life experience. Um, because in opera, we often have stories that have existed in the canon, for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I think that there's a different sort of approach that you can take towards these kind of operas that are being freshly made for today, that are telling stories that haven't been on the operatic stage, which I think is incredibly special and incredibly necessary in order for the art form to be any sort of vehicle for change moving forward, right? Because I think what we were talking about earlier about, creating empathy for these characters, but also showing the humanistic side of incarcerated individuals. If this story can help do that, I think that's so beautiful. And to help the audiences reshape the way they might think about their own perspectives towards these kind of stories, I think that is immensely powerful and should not be underestimated in the role of a director, in the role of producing, the role of a creator. And I commend White Snakes Projects for making this project happen, because I think these are the type of stories that we need to be uplifting and creating space for and welcoming into the new canon. And it makes me think about, like, what is the future of our art form, especially in the United States, and how do we continue being agents of change in a very historically white supremacist art form, right? Like how do we continue to be authentic about it and call each other out, call each other in for this conversation, um, and I think that a, my lens from a directing standpoint always kind of takes in that bigger picture of like, how does this affect the general art form, and how does this storytelling and the authenticness of telling the story affect the way in which we can view how we interact in our everyday lives. It's an immensely, I am sure that, you know, the whole creative team for this project has been working very diligently to tell us authentically. And I know that White Snakes Project is also hosting a myriad of panels, which are incredible as well, which we'll link to in wherever this is being posted. And I think part of what can be agents of change is not only putting on this type of opera, but also having the important conversations around it, which is something that I know that Chabrelle and I have been valuing a lot this whole year, and thankfully with Opera Omaha and our Amplifying the Black Experience series, is how do we have really authentic and genuine conversations about what's going on, about what we can do to help change things, and be really honest with ourselves in that.
Yeah. So, you know, with that being said, what are your hopes for the future, Mr. Davis?
Of opera?
Of opera, yeah, of this art form.
Oh man. So many hopes. I'm going to say thank you to Opera Omaha for giving me the space to do this production. I hope that more opera companies will allow the artists that work in that environment to explore and do work like this, as they are reconciling what it means to be an opera company and the stories that they tell. I hope that opera, the whole community around opera, becomes more empathetic, from usher to board member, and that we will somehow move from this constraint or this concern around funding to become more courageous storytellers.
Courageous storytellers.
That's a good one right there.
That is my big hope right now, because that's the thing I hear the most about is funding. What do we do if we lose a board member? And we've seen it happen through Black Lives Matter and all this, people doing specific shows, wanting to change how they do things, and they lose funders. Luckily, I've not heard of anybody having to close because of that. But I hope for a system, I'll say a system that we can depend on and rely on people who are more concerned with telling truths and not being selfish.
Yes.
You know what, we got a road ahead of us. Here.
I share that hope for
Nick,
and I do hope that we're able to, you know, reevaluate what our priorities are in this kind of storytelling and be more courageous with it. It can be very risky, but I think it's necessary.
Yes. I'd like to hear, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying, fingers crossed that this Death by Life story is one of those stories that starts that change, or at least flickers some sort of spark.
Absolutely. Well, I know you said Melanie, you share those hopes, but I would love to hear what your all's hopes are for the industry.
Oh, goodness. I also agree. More empathy, less selfish intentions. I also want to see a future in opera where, you know, this might be a little controversial, but like where color really, really doesn't matter. It's like you want me to sing this role because I am the best person for this role, because we are all a part of one race, which is the human race. Race is a singular word. And as much as I love and celebrate and am proud of my Blackness, I would love to do that for other cultures and for other people. And they deserve celebration and embracing from other people, and not in a way that tokenizes or appropriates. So so let's get to a point where we're not, I would love to get to a point where we're not doing any of that, and when we're just making art and telling stories because there are stories that need to be told, and it's not a story about somebody's trauma because somebody needs to know that people go through this. Yes.
There it is.
There it is. This is like that, it was Whitney Houston and Natalie Cole at the award ceremony.
Yes. But truly, Chabrelle, I think that is a beautiful hope, to be able to have representation on a stage that is just automatic and no longer about checking off boxes or doing something because it's what is in style, like, oh, well, it's in vogue to talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion these days. So let's talk about it. Let's, talk about how we're amplifying these artists and stuff like that, which, like, yes, we need to make these steps and things like that, but to come from a genuine place of just inclusivity that is secondary at that point, that it's just secondary nature to be inclusive, and that it's just part of the culture, I think I have hope that is where we're headed. And I think that some companies are more ahead of the game than others, but I do think that part of that change is going to be, deciding what stories we're telling and how we're telling them and how we're prioritizing telling them. And I also think that it starts from the ground up, from educating about classical music and about opera, and changing the way in which we discuss the history of opera in our school system, discussing what composers we learn about in our school system, discussing about the ways that Western classical music is essentially Western classical music and white supremacist in its nature, so it's addressing all of those things in a very honest way from the ground up. And I think that there are schools that are making those changes. There are people that are being instrumental in making those changes, and so I think that we are slowly but surely heading there. But what I would love to see is more ownership of that journey that needs to happen, in a way that takes responsibility for the history and then makes that change moving forward, and recognizing that essentially, I think there's this idea from some generations older who think that opera should just be opera and doesn't need to be quote unquote activist or political or socially minded or whatever. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. Art is inherently a part of social activism, or it should be. Maybe that's just my opinion, and I'll say that I'm speaking on my own individual for that. But I don't think we can expect to have a future in opera that is more equitable without being socially and justicely minded. And that's just the truth of it. So, like, take ownership of that, embrace it, be courageous, and let's make some changes.
And that's we're not saying be fearless. We're just saying act in the face of those fears.
Yes.
Yeah. Habadon. Yes.
Habadon.
I adore both of you so much.
Likewise. I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity to talk.
Yes. Nick, thank you so much for sharing so generously, and we're so excited for you and Death by Life and all that is to come. Viewers, you can take part in viewing this virtually in the cyberspace, May 20th through 25th. You can head to Whitesnake's whitesnakesprojects.org. Again, we'll link to that in the bottom of whatever this means. Whitesnakesprojects.org for tickets and more information. And let's support our dear Nicholas Davis.
Woo!
Role.
Thank you so much.
And thank you again for sharing, Chabrelle. Thank you for everything always.
Thank you too, Melanie, and thank you, Nicholas.
Oh, I love you so much. You guys are so dear. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yay.
Toy, toy, toy.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye.